this evening, we have Julie Furnivall from Luton Samaritans talking to us about why it's good for men to talk, especially black men, to talk about their issues and the pains that they're going through. Because men don't talk, especially black men. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Your time.
So I can just talk for England if you like. But also, I'm hoping that we can just be very informal and that you can chat to me and ask me anything that you want. I've also got some PowerPoint slides, which I can show you in a bit if you wish. But to begin with, I think I'll just talk because it's a bit less formal. So yeah, I'm from Luton Samaritans. I'm a volunteer with them. I've been a volunteer with them for a long time, about 30 years. And for me, it's something that's very special and very important in my life. You probably mostly know what Samaritans is and what we do you? Or should I explain a bit about what we do?
We do, but yeah, explain, please.
Well, and perhaps I will show a point to show what we do.
Can I ask firstly,
Yeah, sure.
what got you into working?
Okay, that's a good question. So, hang on, let me just go back to the beginning. There we are. What got me into it? Well, there were lots of things, not just one thing. The vision of Samaritans is that fewer people die by suicide. And I sadly knew about somebody who died by suicide. It wasn't somebody I knew well. It was only somebody I'd met a few times. But I saw the awful, awful repercussions. There was a young boy who was just 5. He just started at school. And he found his father hanging in the garage.
Oh.
And this had a terrible, terrible effect on the boy. The boy's now mid-40s, but just before he found his father took him on his knee and said, I want you to try hard at school and I want you to learn to be very good at reading and writing. He's now mid-40s and he has never learned to read because he associates reading with the emotional pain of finding his father. And he had a really difficult childhood. Anyway, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to become a Samaritan, because I could see how terrible the effects of suicide are, not, on everybody, on the repercussions go on and on and on. Yeah. And they go on and on through the generations. The other reason why was I knew a few people who were Samaritans, and I knew that the training was absolutely fantastic. And I thought that the training might be quite useful to me in my work. What I didn't know was that the training would be not only useful in my work, but useful in my whole life. And it's changed my life and changed me for the better, I think. And it's been absolutely great. And I think the third reason was that I didn't know this at the time, really. I didn't know what I was seeking. But I was seeking perhaps something that was more people-focused in my life. And Samaritans for me has been a huge source of friendship. I've got incredibly good friends through it. And those friends have stayed by me through everything. And just as an aside, the last few weeks I haven't been 100% well. I'm fine now, but my Samaritan friends have been on the phone to me every single day, checking out that I'm okay, and offering to come round and do things for me. And it's just been great. That friendship is so strong. And the other thing is that you might think that people who talk about suicide all day long are a pretty serious lot and we're pretty miserable buggers. And the opposite is true, really, because, because I don't know, I suppose because we talk about sadder things and we're not afraid to talk about sadder things in life, we're also not afraid to party. And there is nothing like a Samaritan's party. It is really quite something, is a Samaritan's party.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And we really, really party hard.
Oh,
And
party hard.
yeah, that's great too. So those, I think, are some of the reasons why I'm a Samaritan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
Yeah. Shall I show you some of these slides, or does anyone want to ask me anything else? I'll show you these slides.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then you can ask me when you learn. Oh, and that's just what this is all about. It's about what Samaritans is. And then, as Spencer said to begin with, it's about how to talk to each other, how to open up a conversation about difficult things. Because, yeah, when you were all coming online, we were all chatting to each other, and we found we had lots in common. And it was really easy to chat, but it's more difficult to chat about the difficult things. You know, it's more difficult when life is really tough, perhaps when you're suffering from depression, or there's something else that's terrible that's happening in life. It's 100 times more hard to talk about that. And not only that, but it's hard to listen to that, and hard to encourage somebody to open up and talk about what's really tough in life. So we're going to talk about how you can open up a conversation with someone and how you can help in a conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm very flexible. So if we want to go off piece a bit and talk about other related things, we can do so.
All right, that's cool.
So I've already said I'm a volunteer. I'm in the Luton branch. The Luton branch is just over 100 volunteers. There are no paid staff, and we're all ordinary people. We give our time freely. We're not professionals. We don't provide counselling. And in the UK, there's 201 branches, and every single one of them is run by volunteers.
How do you get to be a volunteer?
Okay, good question. So there's quite a lot of hoops that people need to jump through in order to become a volunteer, because although it's open to everyone, we want the right kind of people to be a volunteer. So first of all, there's an interview, and it's quite an in-depth interview to find out if it's right for you. And then there's training, and the initial training is 10 weeks long, a morning a week, so Sunday mornings usually, for 10 weeks.
Right.
And it's really in-depth training about, there's a lot of role play about how to listen to each other and how to listen to our callers. And then after that, somebody is matched with a mentor, and you work one-to-one. And to begin with, the trainee listens to the mentor's calls, and then gradually they start doing it themselves with the mentor listening in. And then gradually they start to do it on their own. Right. And then they do some more top-up training. And then eventually they become a full Samaritan. And it takes about a year to become a full Samaritan from start to finish.
Serious?
Yeah. So it's pretty in-depth training, but great. Yeah. Yeah.
Julie.
Oh, go on.
You said that you're all volunteer and you're not counselors.
No.
But when one of your volunteers, for example, or as a volunteer, if you have to deal with situation which is quite distressing,
yes,
and which then leave you feeling vulnerable, how is that addressed?
That's a very good question, and thanks for that. Yeah. So although we're not counsellors, we use counselling skills and many things that are like counselling. And when you're a counsellor, you have supervision, which means that you offload what you've dealt with to someone. And we have something similar. We call it leaders. And we offload to the leader at the end of every shift, and sometimes during the shift as well, if it's particularly difficult. And we also support each other during the shift when it's difficult. So, you know, I might take a call from somebody who is really in the darkest place they could possibly be. And I'm a human being, so that affects me. So when I come off the phone, I'll maybe switch the system so you can switch the phones off so it won't ring anymore. And then I'll wait till the other person comes off their phone call. We'll switch all the phones off, and then we'll go and sit in the kitchen and just drink tea and just talk. And then I'll maybe talk to the leader and offload to the leader. And the leader might talk to me again the next day or the day after that, because I've been through, dealt with a very difficult call. We're very, very well supported, really. And the training means that also we can, because we have such in-depth training over such a long period, it means that we learn to cope with
just put on this thing,
talking to people in the darkest places.
Mandem Jack.
Hello, Garvin.
Hello, Garvin.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, brother.
Yeah,
Right.
thanks for that, Julie.
It's okay. So Garvin, I'm Julie and I'm from Luton Samaritans. And I feel a bit fraudulent because I'm not black and I'm not male, but I'm going to talk anyway.
That's all right. You're a human being, aren't you?
That's
yes,
right.
I'm a human being.
You're
yes.
welcome. You're welcome, Julie.
We welcome you and we commend you for the hard work that you do.
Oh,
It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. That's
right.
lovely.
So can I ask a question, Julie?
Please do.
Do you make any home visits, or is it, as it sounds like, it's like mainly over the phone?
Okay, we don't make home visits anymore. We used to do a long time ago. And I regret really the fact that we don't do that anymore. But, you know, these health and safety bods got in the way, and so we don't do that anymore. We do sometimes do Samaritans work in other settings. So we sometimes go and listen to people if they're in real distress at, let's say, the railway station or something like that. Or on the top of a building if somebody's been found. And we might go and talk to people in that kind of setting.
Would that be like
mostly, go on.
Sorry, would that be like, how would you know about that? Is that if they've rang you, or will the police actually contact you?
The police would contact us.
Okay.
Or similar. And then
So
we go out to someone.
So if someone called you considering to commit suicide, and you could determine that was, you know, that person really sounds like they're in a bad place and will commit suicide. What do you do from there? Do you contact the police to go and maybe try and make contact with them? And
no, we don't. The call's completely confidential.
Okay.
If somebody wants an ambulance or something like that, we tell them ready to ring the ambulance themselves because it's quicker and easier to do that.
Okay, even if they've been referred by the police.
If they've been referred by the police, we go out to them, but we still wouldn't report back to the police because we also have absolute confidentiality in that it's confidential to Samaritans. It's not confidential to me, Julie, because I will talk to the other person that I'm on shift with and I will talk to my leader. So it's not confidential to me personally, but it's confidential to Samaritans.
Yeah.
And we also believe that people have the right to choose what they do. We don't tell people what to do. So we don't say, oh, you mustn't do that. You mustn't go and kill yourself. Oh, you mustn't do that. Or let's say somebody's in an abusive situation with someone. And we don't say something like, you must leave your partner. Because people have to make their own decisions. And even if that decision is that somebody wants to die by suicide, we hear that. And what we do is we try and help people to think through all the options. Could there be a better way than dying by suicide?
Yeah.
Like a sounding board.
Pardon? A sounding board. Yeah, that's exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I ask one more question?
Yeah,
Was the service still available through the lockdown?
Yes, it was.
And
It was quite a limited service, but yes, it was. And how we did that was we organised it so that we all came into the branch at different times, and we went straight to a little booth where we were able to answer the phone. And we were able to answer the phone. We could still see each other and shout to each other across a room, but we were sufficiently distant from each other to be within COVID regulations. And we all had a piece of paper to keep in the car to show the police, to say that we were key workers and we were allowed to be on the road and be going to a place because what our service was essential.
yeah, was there a noticed increase in calls starting from the lockdown even up to now?
Yes, there was. Yes. And Mark, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, hi, Julie. Yeah, I was just wondering, so how many sort of people do you have on a shift at any given time, and sort of average, how many calls do you kind of get through people? Is it more at the weekends, more in the week, or?
Yes, there are more at the weekends and there's more in the middle of the night. But the minimum is 2. There are always 2 people on duty, on shift. But sometimes there's more, 3, 4, 5, depends. Yeah, but a minimum of 2. And the calls are pretty constant. So you put the phone down and almost instantly it rings again unless you switch them off. So it's continuous, really. But we, when people ring Samaritans, sometimes they get a message saying all the lines are busy at the moment. Please keep holding. And they can keep holding for 10, 15 minutes before they actually get through. What we're trying to do is reduce that waiting time. And we know that that waiting time is its worst in round about midnight through till about 3 a.m. And of course, that's also the time when people are the least likely to want to do a shift as well.
Right.
Can I ask one more question, Julie?
Please, yes.
Yeah. So how does sort of Luton measure up compared to sort of other towns and cities in the country?
Well, measure up as in terms of
statistics like numbers.
Okay.
Up,
so we're pretty good branch. We have just over 100 volunteers, and that's above average for the number of volunteers. Although London branches sometimes have over 200 volunteers, but there's also little tiny rural branches that are only open for a few hours a week. And they only have a handful of volunteers because they're tiny little places like Shetland Isles or something. We are open almost all the time. There are some times when we're not open, like Fridays. There are bits of Fridays that we're not open. When we aren't open, the phone system automatically transfers the calls to another branch that is open. So callers can ring us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we see it in Luton as a kind of a bit of a black mark that we can't quite be open 24 hours a day because we haven't got the volunteers to do 24 hours a day. So we're working on trying to get more volunteers so that we can be a 24/7 branch.
Cool.
Go on. I was just going to say we're better than the average, but we're still not, we're a long way from being the best.
Garvin?
Yes, I'm not sure if this question was already asked, but just wanting to have an idea as to what sort of support is available for a volunteer after dealing with a pretty distressing call.
Okay, it's a very good question, and it's very, very important. So we first of all, our training makes us very prepared for difficult calls, and the training is extensive, and we have continued to train all the time. So I've got to do some top-up training very soon, not tonight, but soon. And then we call it a leader, but it's a very experienced Samaritan who is on duty throughout the shift. And when we've taken a difficult call, the first thing we would do would be to telephone the leader, who will probably be sitting in her home. Or sometimes the leader's in the branch with us, and we might go into a room with the leader. And we offload to the leader, and she will listen, or he will listen. And then we also support each other. So when I come off a difficult call, I'll switch the phones off, and the other person will, when she finishes or he finishes his call, will also switch the phones off. And then we'll go in the kitchen and have a tea and maybe cry over each other and hug each other. I don't know. But then the more important support is the leader. And we talk to the leader at the end of every shift as well and offload to the leader. And if it's been especially hard, the leader might phone us again in a few days, and we keep talking about it until it has become dealt with. But you never forget who is there.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So how do you deal with people that are like immigrants, refugees that have just come in and
Okay.
English is a second language?
Yeah, it's a good question. You've also got me on one of my hobby horses, because I don't think we do enough for this group of people, and I want us to do more. So if they're ringing us or writing to us by email, well, we just have to find ways to deal with it. We used to, once upon a time, have a language bank of people who could speak a variety of languages. We don't have that any longer because it became too difficult to administer. One of my hobby horses is that that's wrong, and we should have that. I also think that, I said earlier that we might go to a railway station or something like that if somebody is feeling suicidal at a railway station. I think we as Samaritans should be going out into the hostels and hotels and so on, where people who are new immigrants are. And we should be working with those people in the hostels and the hotels, because face to face it's easier, isn't it, to cope with the language thing, because you can see each other's faces and so on. And perhaps you can also have interpreters. Sorry, am I talking too much?
Right, yeah, I was sorry,
No, it's fine.
because it just flashed up in my head. So have you thought about using AI like a translator machine? It's like
No.
Google Translate or anything like that? Or
Yeah,
like that?
it could happen, because people also contact us by email and web chat, and we could use Google Translate as part of that. Yes, it's possible.
Okay.
We haven't really done much about that, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not normally a problem then, or?
It's just something that we don't do at the moment.
Okay, cool. Why
but as I
I'm
said-
saying that is because I used to be foster care.
Okay. Yep.
And some of the first ones I had were refugees.
Mhm.
And the problem straight away was language, obviously. But
Yes.
so it is, you have to have a closeness with them. They have to start trusting you before they start opening up and all that. So
Yes, that's true.
the care is much more in depth, and
Yes.
and a very sensitive place that you're talking about, because you don't know what's going on from where they came from. So
Yes.
it's I'll just mind-boggling how you guys deal with that. So it's just wanted to know.
It's true. And yeah, people who have come from, well, who are in an asylum seeker or a refugee, they've come from war-torn countries, they've come from situations of intense trauma. And yeah, it's important to be able to talk about that. And I think as yet, at this moment in time, we haven't yet cracked how to do it better. We've got work to do on that.
Sydney, you got your hand up.
No, yeah, just to finish off this point. What I know I'm talking about refugees and people dealing with foreigners coming in, but what about people that have been in Luton for a long time that still is their second language and that stuff like that, from different? Because I know Samaritans is with one religion, doesn't it? Come from a religion.
Right. Okay, that's a good question that you've asked me, and it's a very important one. I'm going to stop you there. Samaritans, the word Samaritans comes from the story in the Bible, but we are not a Christian organization. All of us have no religion, or not all of us have no religion, but we are for people of no religion and of any faith. And some of our volunteers are Muslims, Buddhists, all sorts of people. And that's important.
Okay, yeah.
It was actually an accident that we were called Samaritans. It was set up by a man called CHAT'S in 1953. And he set it up as a telephone service in the basement of where he was working. And the local papers, I think it was the Daily Mail, called it the Samaritan Service, and the name stuck. But most of us dislike the name because it sounds as if we are Christians.
Right.
So Sydney, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, I did. I was wondering about coping skills. What sort of coping skills would you impart to someone who was feeling probably vulnerable or feeling at their wit's end or something like that? That would, that's something that would help them move forward from that feeling of helplessness to that point where they're able to move on.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we certainly do talk about people who feel utterly helpless. And through talking about it, we try to help people to identify just some bright things in their life, some things where it's a little less bleak and dark, and to focus on that and to focus on how one can build on that, while still acknowledging that everything else that is wrong, because, I don't want to take away, or there's no point in denying that things are very bad when they are very bad. There are sort of standard relaxation techniques and breathing techniques and things like that. We might talk about that, but more than that, it's just, you'd be astonished how powerful just talking is. Sometimes people ring up and they talk to me almost in a monologue, and they just talk and talk and talk and talk. But I don't say anything apart from now and then. And at the end of it, they say, "Oh, thank you very much. You've helped me so much." I think I haven't done anything. I've only said, But what they've done is got it off their chest.
Yeah, and you've been the shoulder or the listening ear.
That's exactly right. And that's unbelievably powerful. You wouldn't credit how powerful that is.
Sorry, I was going to ask, when you talk about Buddhists and Christians and Muslims, what is the diversity then behind the scenes, like answering the phone? Like Black people, are we there? Are we represented or?
No, well, yes. But again, this is one of my hobby horses. I think the diversity in Luton branch is not as, amongst the volunteers, is not as good as I would like it to be. And we have a lot of meetings when we talk about what can we do about this. And we've just appointed a new volunteer who is Deputy Director for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. So we've got, I have to say, I'm ashamed to say really, that the majority of our volunteers are white. The majority of them are also over the age of 50. And we want to change that. We want more young volunteers, and we want more people from minority ethnic communities, or from a variety of heritages. So out of our 100 and odd volunteers, I'd say we've this is guessing, I'm not looking at these actual. I think we've got about 3 Afro-Caribbean volunteers and about 4 Asian volunteers, 3 of whom I think are Muslim. And then we've got a couple of Eastern Europeans and an Australian, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So that's, in my opinion, not good enough.
And is that out of 200 volunteers, Julie? Yeah.
Of 100.
Oh, 100. Okay, it's quite low. Yeah.
I think it is.
Is that because the ethnic community, they're not offering their services, or is it because, in your opinion, they're not making it through the interview or the training?
No, I think it's that they're not offering their services. And maybe that's about us and our image. So maybe we're not going out into communities and saying, hey, this is what we are and we need you. And maybe our visual images and the nature of what we look like and sound like might mean that people think, oh, this isn't an organization for me. You know, and if any of you have any ideas that can help us, that would be good.
One more question before I bring in Sydney and then Mark.
Yeah.
It's not so much a question. That there's been a time when I was going to ring Samaritans and I was in a low place at a time. And I also didn't feel at the time, I wanted to speak to someone, but I didn't know who to speak to and offload to. And then it came to me, Samaritans. But then I still didn't make the phone call because of what you just said. I wasn't really sure if they was really going to help me in the way I wanted to be helped. You understand what I mean? Like, you know?
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, and it's a fair point, you know, and something that I think we urgently need to do something about.
And even though if someone else came to me and they had an issue, I would say to them, you could ring Samaritans.
Yeah, good.
But for some reason, I personally at that time didn't do it.
What did you eventually do then?
Huh?
What did you eventually do? Who did you eventually talk to?
I think I ended up writing stuff out and looking at it that way.
That's another good strategy. And we do have a web chat service as well. I think the web chat service is used more by a wider range and a wider diversity of people.
Right.
Are you saying you musically wrote it out and you got your feelings
not even just musically. I think it's more like a poem. I just wrote it down quickly as a poem.
Cool.
Yeah. Sydney, you have a question? Then Mark, then Desmond.
Yeah, my question was about diversity, because you had mentioned that you don't have a lot of volunteers from the Black and ethnic minority community. But what about the service users? Do you, in terms of build up, do you find that you get more from the Black and ethnic minority community, or from other communities using the service more?
That's quite interesting, because we don't have a way of recording the ethnicity or heritage of our callers. So I don't know. If I do it on kind of gut feeling from just listening to a lot of people, I'd say we do get a lot of calls from minority ethnic communities. We certainly get a lot of calls from Afro-Caribbean communities, people from Afro-Caribbean communities. Perhaps less so from Asian communities, because I think Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus may perceive us as a Christian organization. That name gets in the way again. And so perhaps less there. But yeah, we do have a lot of callers from ethnic minority communities.
Can I ask you, what kind of problems are people facing these days that they're ringing up about? Is it like can't pay the bills? Is it relationship stuff? Is it childhood stuff that they can't deal with or haven't dealt with? What do you think?
All of those things, and more besides. Yeah, relationships is a very strong theme. Recently, cost of living has been a huge issue for so many people. People feeling inadequate because they can't provide for their families. Childhood abuse, different sorts. Somebody becomes an adult. We have callers, by the way, from every age group, from 10 onwards, and before that even sometimes. Yeah, what else do we sometimes have? Housing issues. We get a lot of calls from prison, really a lot of calls from prison. Because prisoners aren't allowed mobile phones usually, depends what kind of prison it is, but 99% of the time they're not allowed a mobile phone. But if they say that they are feeling suicidal, the prison officers will give them a phone that has only one number or only 2 or 3 numbers in. One of the numbers is Samaritans, and they can call Samaritans and talk to us. And many of the prisoners are feeling very, very low, sometimes very frightened. And sometimes I'm afraid prisoners ring us because they're bored out of their mind and they can't think what else to do. So they ring us to cheer up their day. Well, that seems to me reasonable, to be honest. We also get loneliness as a very common theme, especially amongst older people. Young people, bullying, fear, exam stress, all of those things are very strong.
Mark, so you had your hand up and then Desmond.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Sydney asked my question already.
All right, sorry, all right. Desmond, your time.
I'll go through a few more of these PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, just flick them through while
Okay.
you're answering the questions if you want.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
sure.
Desmond.
So that
Julia, just I picked up on a few little bits there, and one of the things that didn't resonate with me is this idea of Afro-Caribbean.
okay, maybe I'm using the wrong phrase, and if so, you might want to correct me. Please do.
No, so it's basically about maybe looking at how people tend to define themselves these days, and
Yes.
Afro is basically a hairstyle.
Okay.
So most people who identify as African Caribbean would be seen as part of the diaspora.
Okay.
So maybe African Caribbean or Caribbean, or might be a better way to maybe phrase it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Right. And the other point I wanted to raise was in terms of inclusiveness, maybe a little more efforts like what you're doing tonight.
Yes.
In going where people are. You can't expect people to come to you when they don't even
I agree with
feel
you.
accessible to you.
I agree 100%. That's why I'm so pleased about tonight.
So maybe places like I don't know how much opposition you would get, but the black churches.
Yeah.
And maybe senior citizen club or something like that. But
yes.
I've always thought that it's about the organization reaching out.
It is, yes. And my role in Samaritans is about reaching out.
Yeah.
So
and
all the suggestions you're making are very useful.
Yeah, and personally, I find this thing about ethnic minority a little bit uncomfortable because
yes,
as an African heritage person, there are over 1.3 billion people of my heritage. So to be referring to maybe a fifth of the world's population as a minority is a bit disingenuous.
It is. And actually, I started by saying minority ethnic community rather than the other way around, because it is the community within other communities that doesn't have the overall power, but the people are not a minority at all.
Yeah.
And
Maybe marginalized community might be one way of looking at it, because
yes,
there are people in this society that are marginalized,
yes,
and that covers a wide range of people, including whites.
yes, I agree with that.
So
Terminology is very, very important, and
well, it is, because it was designed to serve a purpose. And unless we can challenge the language, we will be forever perpetuating the false narrative.
yes, and I don't want to do that. So I'm very happy if people correct me or suggest improvements or whatever.
I'm merely suggesting, because I mean,
that's good.
Marginalized communities as a much more inclusive terminology.
Yes, I also like Luton's diverse community, and I often use that. I think that's better, because that includes things like disabled communities and so on, or people with disability in our communities. Okay. So that's just a little bit about what we do. Somebody said, how often are the calls? It says there's a call for help every 7 seconds.
Every 7 seconds.
Yeah, every 7 seconds. This is the bit I especially wanted to show you, because this is a scary slide. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50 and young people aged 16 to 24. And 3/4 of deaths by suicide are men. That's why for Men Don't Chat, this is so important. And suicide is not equal. The lower your social class, the more likely you are to be affected by suicide. And to follow on from what we were just saying, any marginalized community, whatever that community is, again, are likely to be affected. People are likely to be affected by suicide.
Julie, are you aware of the well-established research by Durkheim and suicide, and the idea that Catholic men have the lowest suicide rate? Would you say that's still the case?
I don't know. I know about Durkheim. I don't know whether or not that's still the case.
Okay.
I could probably find out for you.
Yeah, because one of the reasons they put forward is that Catholic men were able to offload with their priests.
Yes, that's a possibility.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, that reinforces the next bit, that the next few bits, that offloading and talking is just so important.
So their priest is like their counselor, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's the people that can talk to in confidence and offload on them.
Yeah.
And get absolution. So maybe this is the role Man Them Chat is playing.
Perhaps it is.
Maybe we need to designate a high priest.
Oh, here we go.
A pontiff.
That'll be you then, Desmond, innit?
I am not worthy.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
So, Laps, is that your name? Is that what you want me to call you? Anyway, you've got your hand up.
Laps is fine.
Okay.
You can call me Susan if you want.
So you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking, since the Samaritans is icon for someone to talk to in the time of need and time of stress, should the Samaritans make more of a plea for families to have a family time, like once a week, or get together as a family and to talk to each other? Because we do a Zoom since COVID started. We do a family Zoom since March 20. A family Zoom every week on a Sunday. and so we all talking to each other. So I used to go to my, at the end of the year, I used to go to my family up in Scotland and visit, and that was my time to find out what's going on with everyone. But since we were doing I've not had to go to Scotland. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm like, oh, I can't go anyway, but I don't feel like I'm losing out because I've got family time.
Yeah. We try hard not to tell people what to do.
Understood. Like
Whilst,
if you realize that family day is great because all you could talk to each other more, and it will.
yeah, I mean, family day is great, yes. Like I said, we try though not to tell people what to do and how to live their lives, because people have to find their own way to live their lives. Yeah.
I don't see it as telling people what to do. I'm saying it's like a suggestion that we, like the Samaritans, can say, we find that people love to talk to us just to get stuff off their mind, off their chest.
True. Yes.
We're saying, like, be more family, like we're family to them. When they call, they feel like, so pretend you're all Samaritans around in your family.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
To talk to someone in the family.
Okay, thanks. So that's what we look like in Cardiff Road. And one of the things that we try to do is to help people to listen to each other, as I said earlier, as well as we at Samaritans. So in your family time thing, these are some ideas about how to listen, or in any other situation. And we've got what we call shush listening tips, which help you to listen to somebody when they're trying to tell you something that might be a bit hard. So the first tip.
Good. This is good. This is what I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what you were talking about. So the first little tip is showing that you really care. So you're focusing on the other person. You're making eye contact. Put away your phone. Okay. Showing that you care. And then having patience, because it might take time and several attempts before a person is ready to open up. And you might need to be with them for quite a long time or on several different occasions before they'll really tell you what's the matter. Using open questions that need more than a yes or no answer. I love tell me more. I am forever saying to people on the phone, tell me more. Tell me more about why you feel concerned about your gender. Tell me more about why you feel you can't talk to your uncle. Tell me more about how you're coping with your depression, whatever it is. And tell me more is a very, it's a very non-judgmental thing to say. Now, say it back is an important technique. So whatever somebody has said to me, I'll say more or less the same thing back, but in slightly different words. And it's a check that I've understood. So someone says to me, oh, life's shit at the moment. I can't, I'm not earning enough. I can't pay the electricity bill. The kids want new trainers. And it's a fucking nightmare at the moment. So I might say back, really hard your life at the moment, you said. You're really struggling with finding the money for so many different things, for the kids' trainers, for the electricity bill, for everything else. Is that how it is? So I'm saying it back to check that I've really understood it. And I'm not offering any solutions. I'm just saying it back. And if I get it right, people usually say, yeah, you've really understood that. If I've got it a little bit wrong, and when I said it back just then, maybe I didn't include everything. So they might say, well, no, that's not quite right. There's also this, this, and this. and you've begun a question and you've begun to explore things deeper and deeper and deeper,
Helps
just by
them,
saying it back.
helps them to expand on it more, doesn't it, as well?
Exactly that. Exactly. It's a really powerful tool to use. Oh, I've done that one. Oh my God, I'm going the wrong way. And having courage, the last one.
Any
So,
chance you can get a copy of that?
yes, I'll send it to, well, if somebody gives me email addresses or a WhatsApp address, I'll send it.
Yep, no worries, I'll sort that.
Okay.
I'll sort that.
All right.
And the last one is having courage. I think this one's especially important when you're talking to teenagers. I don't know what you think about talking to teenagers, but when I talk to my own teenagers and said, what's the matter? They'd say, nothing. Well, there must be something wrong. You've got a face like a wet dishcloth. All right, nothing. But so don't be put off by a negative response. But also at the same time, you don't need to be too pushing. You've got to get the balance right. And the other thing that's important to know is don't feel you have to fill a silence, because a silence can be so, so important. When both people are kind of gathering their thoughts and trying to work out what to say. So did I talk across someone just then? Was somebody trying to say something?
No, I just said balance. It was balance again. Carry on.
Yeah. So how to be a good listener. This is a summary of it. Make eye contact and put away your phone. Focus completely on the other person. Pauses are fine. Try not to jump in to fill a silence. Say back what you think it is they're wanting you to hear. Resist putting your interpretation on it. That one's important. And don't give up. Sometimes it can take a few tries. And we've got a little booklet, which I think some of you might have seen, called Little Tips for Helping Someone Open Up when Something's Up. And if any of you want to give me a postal address, I can get you some copies of the Little Tips. Or this one's very important. You might want to volunteer with us. So you might want to be a listening volunteer, but there's all sorts of other roles as well. Publicity, administration, finance, fundraising. Next week is called Blue Monday or Brew Monday. So the 16th of January and the week beginning the 16th of January is the week in the year when people most often feel down in the dumps every year, because it's January, the Christmas tree lights have come down, the bills have come in, and the reality of life sinks in. And there are, sad to say, quite a lot of suicides during this time, or just simply people feeling down and bloody miserable. So we at Samaritans try to encourage people to share a cup of tea with friends and talk to each other. So we're going to be in the, I call it the Arndale Centre, but it's supposed to be called the Mall, isn't it? We're going to be in the Mall on Monday afternoon this week, and we're going to give out tea bags and coasters, and we're going to say to everybody in the Mall, take the tea bag home, have a cup of tea with your mate and talk to them. And hopefully you'll all come and visit us in the Mall and get a tea bag and a cup of tea. We've even got some actual cups to give to people to encourage them to have a cup of tea, and also meet some more of us, not just me.
Depends what type of tea bag you're giving away.
I don't know what kind it is. It's just, I think it's PG Tips.
I think I've got two of them actually. I've got two.
Yeah, they're nice tea.
It needs to be Yorkshire tea, I reckon, innit?
Oh, here we go now.
I don't know what kind
mate.
it is.
PG's all right still. PG's all right.
Yeah, but some of the people who will be in the Arndale with us are not listening volunteers. They're what we call support volunteers who just help us all sorts of things like giving out tea bags in the Arndale. So that's just more about donating to us, and that's our phone number. People want to ring us. So that's kind of all of my PowerPoint bits. So anything else people want to ask me? Oh, and I haven't looked at all the things in this chat.
Oh, you missed the you missed the typing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, nothing to anything about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's important to get out to people that you know, there's rich people out there that are still sad. They're still got.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like you, Friday, winning the lottery on Saturday, you're just a rich idiot on Saturday. So
Yeah.
just because you've got money doesn't mean that your problems are solved.
So,
The problems are still there. So we shouldn't just reach out to poor people, marginalized people, reach out to those people we think, you know, like are strong, you know, that
yeah.
they look like they've got everything, you know. So how are we going to approach those people? Not sure how you do that, but I suppose they'll
I don't know either, but you're absolutely right. And certainly, I personally have talked to some very rich people on the telephone, and I've also listened to some very senior people in the media about how they had suicidal feelings and talk about how Samaritans has helped them. And, you know, some very, very well-known people, especially people in the music industry. Music industry, I don't know why, but I don't know, but creativity in general. Creative people are often creative because they've had kind of emotional trauma, and they're using that emotional trauma for their creativity. So yeah,
It's the ups and downs, isn't it, within the creative field, isn't it? Like it's such a buzz when you go on stage and you perform in front of people, no matter, I suppose, how many other people, and then afterwards now you're coming down, isn't it?
Yes.
After that you come down, but you're still a bit hyped for a little while, and it takes a little while to come down, and then you may crash.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a lot of reason why a lot of people within the, especially the music business, they find that, you know, they end up taking some form of drug to either help them come down, or to balance them out, or even to help them sleep, because they're so hyped now they can't even get to sleep.
Yeah. And then there are the people who are using, if you like, they're self-medicating with alcohol, drugs, and everything else. And at the end of the day, it has the opposite effect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just taking a photograph of you. Giving me an email to send things to, so I'm just.
Oh right, I was just gonna write it down and.
Right, I've just taken a photograph of it.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, that's my email. So. That's not Skip's email. It's my email. I just sent that one.
Okay, right.
So you haven't sent it to everyone if you think you sent it to me.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'll maybe send things to Spencer and he can send it to whoever.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Any more questions, guys, before we wrap up? It's about 8 o'clock now.
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, Julie, thank you for your time and thanks for coming by and chatting with us.
Fine, that's fine. I can't thank you all enough for having me, because
Our pleasure.
you know, it's really, really important, and I've really valued the things that you said to me, and thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
I
very
really
much.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you. I
you.
hope you've enjoyed it.
I hope you weren't too scared.
No, I wasn't scared. Thank you all for listening to me and for your support. That's really nice.
Appreciate it. Thanks
Okay.
a
I
lot.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.